Okay, so we are recording. Welcome, everyone. This is You Are Not Alone, supporting communities through pregnancy experiences. My name is Kate Vaughn. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the national grassroots organizer with Grandmothers for Reproductive Rights. And I'm so excited about this event. And in addition to my role here at GER, I'm also an abortion doula and a birth doula. And I really believe that this moment is one where we would all be served by sharpening our skills around how to support each other emotionally through the time that we're in, and supporting people through a full range of pregnancy experiences, and particularly in this moment, abortion. So we are so lucky because we have three brilliant folks who are going to share with us their wisdom and insights, and maybe we will even have some questions from you all. So I am going to do some brief introductions of those folks, and then we'll get started. So to start, I'm going to begin with Margaret Kreitz, who uses she and her, and Margaret, you can wave, look, waving her human hand. Margaret ran a rape crisis center for nearly 28 years in the rural South. And since leaving that work, she has worked with a field research team examining community resilience after disaster. And right now is the community engagement project manager for Lumber River United Way, where she coordinates a volunteer income tax assistance program. Her job this month also expands to include community health benefits, navigation, and period poverty programs. Margaret is also the co-chair of Pro-Choice North Carolina, formerly NARAL, a talkline advocate with the National Talkline All Options, a trained abortion doula, and serves on the National Advisory Board for Grandmothers for Reproductive Rights, and volunteers with her local diaper bank, the annual knit-in and 4-H programs, so she's not busy at all. She is a co-author of a book examining attitudes towards abortion through a racial and religious lens that should be published next year, and she has 6 cats and a 70-pound toddler of a dog. So welcome, Margaret. And next we have Joan Adler, who also uses she and her, and Joan, you can wave your human hand. So folks, there we go. Joan was a pregnancy options and sexual health counselor at Planned Parenthood in central New York for 30 years. And the affiliate she worked at provided both surgical and medication abortions. Planned and unplanned pregnancy counseling also often included financial counseling and seeing patients through the short-term Medicaid application process. She and her team work closely with community services and professionals, since referrals were often needed for obstetric care, adoption planning, domestic violence intervention, substance use treatment, and extended mental health counseling. In 2020, Joan retired, but continued to be active in a local group called End Abortion Stigma that is a partner with GER, and we're so excited about the work they're doing in upstate New York. And those folks at End Abortion Stigma came together 6 years ago when they saw the handwriting on the wall about Roe's fragility. And since that group came of age during pre-Roe years, they felt they could make a difference by telling their stories. And so like GER, End Abortion Stigma, or EAS, talks to student groups, shows films, and hosts talkbacks, rallies, op-eds, and lobbies legislators. And Joan's retirement job is running a daylily nursery with her 2 dear friends, where they have close to 400 varieties, and she has 2 highly amusing dogs who mostly keep the deer away from the lilies. So welcome, Joan. And last but certainly not least is Celine, who uses she, her, and is waving at you. Celine is a reproductive justice organizer and activist. She's an action council leader with NARAL Pro-Choice California, based in Los Angeles. And she's a former abortion storyteller for NARAL Pro-Choice America. Recently, she was a district leader for the California Nurses Association's campaign for CalCare, or California's recent Medicare for All bill. She's an elected assembly district delegate, representing Democrats in her district in the California Democratic Party. And she also organizes with the Democratic Socialists of America in LA in the Healthcare Justice Committee, leading health equity efforts and reproductive justice campaigns. She is pursuing a master's degree in public policy at UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs, with a focus on health policy. And she's a member of UC Survivors and Allies, a graduate student and survivor-led organization studying students' experiences with on and off campus resources for survivors of sexual assault across all of the University of California campuses. So we are so lucky to have these folks here. And I really want to start, I guess, by just putting a question out that's like, we just heard a bunch of things in your bios, but I'm really curious about how you come to this conversation today. Why is it important to you to share what you know about how to support people through abortion and pregnancy experiences? And maybe we'll start with Margaret, and then folks can go from there.
Certainly 28 years of a rape crisis center in the rural South and all of the religious Bible Belt, rural South that embodies really made me quite aware of the absolute necessity of bodily autonomy and integrity, and how necessary the ability to have dominion over your own body is just sort of the basic building block to being able to navigate in this world. And so, you know, having to work with folks in their attitudes and beliefs and having them crash up against unplanned pregnancies or pregnancies that were a result of sexual abuse became a big part of what I became passionate about in the work I was doing. Also, there was an organization that called Provide, and they offered trainings around stigma and abortion referrals specifically to rape crisis domestic violence centers in the South. And that was really a great connector of putting together the rape crisis work and the reproductive justice work.
Oh, Joan, you're muted.
Sorry. Okay, thank you. So I think I'll jump in because I had just graduated with a master's in health advocacy and had actually planned to work in a hospital as a patient representative, but our local hospital didn't have that type of program. So an opening, a job opening became available at our local Planned Parenthood, and I did. I took it, not really knowing, not knowing what to expect and not knowing what issues I'd encounter at that time. And I learned very, very quickly that there was really a need for providing safe, non-judgmental, you know, clear, informative, you know, services, resources for our patients so that they, you know, they could feel free and they could feel, had developed some degree of peace so they could think clearly about their options and their decisions. So, you know, I just kind of grew on the job and also became committed to this work because it was so essential. And women's stories are so profound, and it was such an honor to be confided in, you know, and it was so interesting how, you know, if in fact you were able to really convey that it was a safe and non-judgmental space that the person was in, you know, just how it can absolutely move mountains. You know, it would be such a gift to the patient and would be so helpful in like converting a process that might have been, you know, might be perceived as such an ordeal on so many levels, you know, to really kind of alleviate those fears and help clarify thinking.
Yeah, I really came into this space in the aftermath of my own abortion experience. I was a week away from graduating undergrad and I found out I was pregnant. I was like, well, I need to go get an abortion. And this is in California. And even though I was in liberal, progressive California, I still experienced barriers being like a 21-year-old college student, you know, and the end of the semester, you know, thin financially and trying to navigate something that has never really been discussed with me. We didn't really think about it. And I think that's something that I realized, like, we weren't actually talking about this until then. Now I'm in this position and I'm in the middle of finals and I have to go to my health center that doesn't provide any sort of resources except a referral to a Planned Parenthood, but there's no doctor that can give me medication. There's no ultrasounds at my health center. You make an appointment with Planned Parenthood, having to wait a week for that appointment, having to pay over $150 just to pay the copay, even though my insurance covered part of it, really navigating, well, okay, I'm taking this pill this day, and then these many hours I take this pill, and where can I go and do this, and who can I talk to? And at the same time realizing, well, I'm still in California, and I have so much more privilege being in California than in another state. And I'm Latina. I grew up in El Paso, Texas, and I was really reflecting a lot on, like, wow, if I was still in Texas, it would be a very different experience. And so I was really overwhelmed with that amount of privileges that I experienced. I was like, well, I need to do something to make sure everybody has a better experience than I do, regardless of where you live or how much you make or what your job is, or if you're a student or not. And that's how I've been in this work of really trying to make it more equitable access to reproductive care and abortion care. I'm happy to chat further to my experience, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing that. And thank you, Celine, for sharing your personal experience. And we know that folks seeking abortions are met with many barriers, right? And some of those are logistical and political and legal and financial and all of those things. And some of them are emotional, right? And some of that, a lot of that is about stigma that's put on folks, the messages they get from their communities, and also just things that they have going on for themselves emotionally. And so I agree with Joan that holding space for people who are having abortions is an honor. It's an honor to sit with people in their decision-making process, to sit with them during abortions and then afterwards. And I'm curious, in y'all's experience, what are some of the key skills or tools that feel like they properly honor what an honor it is to be that person for someone else? Like, what are some of the essential things that feel most important to you and in holding that space?
Well, I'll jump in. I think it's always important to, start with respect, start with, of course, introducing yourself and your own pronouns and asking how the person would like to be addressed, how they, and I often start off with this statement that's, just introducing myself and just simply saying, that this is a judgment-free space. I don't, there's no judgment here, and that we, feel that, you know what's best for yourself, for your future, for your family. And then it's really certainly asking open-ended questions so a person can tell you, as much or as little as they feel comfortable, and not giving advice, but just being supportive and helping them, through your support, to sort out, their own thoughts and feelings, if that's what they're grappling with. I don't know, just like not making any assumptions about what emotional expression means. Like if someone is crying, I'm not going to assume that they're crying because they're grief-stricken or they're sad. I may well ask, like, what are your tears about? And they could be tears of relief, they could be, nervous laughter, doesn't mean that, this person is cavalier about her decision. It just may be, an anxiety reaction. And I guess, another thing is like being comfortable with silence and not, having a need to fill up space. Because sometimes people just need to sit and will talk when they're ready, or to feel safe in saying nothing. And I also would think that like not like jumping in too quickly, with to like cut short someone's emotion, like if someone is crying, don't feel like you need to like just like zoop right in there and enfold them, and you know what I mean. And well, first of all, I mean, numero uno is that some people do not feel comfortable being touched, So I mean, if you're getting a sense that maybe that person would like some physical comfort, I would certainly ask ahead of time, if is it okay if I hold your hand, or is there any, or what do you feel comfortable with? Would you like a hug? But I would just, because, I personally just want to encourage a person to be able to express what, however they want to express something, and for however long they need to express it also, and to not, once again, not make any assumptions about it. And then, not make any assumptions about orientation or gender. And I don't know, I think I've talked enough. I'm sure my comrades here will, have pearls too.
So echoing something that Joan said, so often the conversations around reproductive decision making has so much baggage that people need to figure out what's theirs and what has been put on them by other people. And part of that is the stigma, but also expectations from families, from partners, from acquaintances, from friends. And a lot of times, especially with the talk line, I find myself reminding callers and people I talk to that, like Joan said, your life, what's going to work for you and what's not, and your decision is a good decision, and validating that there is no right or wrong reason to make a reproductive decision, and that you can make that decision solely with your heart, or you can make it solely with your brain, or some weird combination of what's important to you. But so many people bring so much baggage to that it muddies up a decision that's already difficult.
Thank you. I mean, I think echoing Joan and Margaret too, just that everyone experiences, a pregnancy or abortion decision very differently. And it evolves over time. I know that in the aftermath of my experience, I was very clear what I wanted. I knew exactly what I wanted for myself, what was best for me and my body and my life. There was some month after, I was like, wait, I don't feel guilty. Am I supposed to feel guilty? I don't feel bad. Am I supposed to feel bad? And then going online, like, well, how do other people feel? Like, what's normal? And realizing that there is no normal, and that people live beautiful, happy lives, whatever decision they make, as long as it's their decision to make. And then, being able just to see online, see like, oh, these people are fine, and I feel like them, and okay, I feel good, I feel normal, and really respecting, the wide range of experiences after. And and I think too, especially being a young person now in this world, I think there is more judgment for people my age. So I'm 27. I'm the same age that my mother was pregnant with me, and I have no intention of having children anytime soon. And I had a friend talk to me the other day when she was getting her IUD removed because she wanted to take a break from hormones for her mental health, and feeling the judgment from her doctor about, well, oh, are you going to start having kids? And she does not want to have kids at all. And then feeling the judgment of like, well, if I get pregnant and I want to keep it, would my friends judge me for wanting to continue the pregnancy? or would they judge me for having an abortion? And it just feels like there's just no winning. Someone's always going to have an opinion about your body, and then having to respect that and be that shield for someone. Like, no, like, I support you in any decision you make, whatever you do. You have my full support, and however I can help you, I will do my best to help you.
Can I jump in there? I think it is absolutely astonishing how anybody feels that they have the right to comment on someone else's pregnancy decision. And people do, you know, they feel like they can tell you, and that they can, you know, and they can tell you in no uncertain terms, and they can use moral language and emotional language. And it's, you know, it has nothing to do with them. I'm sorry. You know, it's just.
No, it's.
But I would
say
that is so often people's experience with so much of their lives, that having somebody say, I trust you to make the decision for you that's best, maybe the first time they've ever heard somebody say that, which is bizarre.
But I think that is so true. And I mean, just, you know, I mean, okay, so I would say that one of the other do's, or maybe it's a don't, is that you can like validate and affirm a patient in a patient-centered manner, as opposed to saying like, I agree with you, you're right, you know, you're this, you're that, you know. It's more like, you know, it sounds like you've given this a tremendous amount of thought, or it sounds like, you know, your family is a priority for you right now, you know. And in that way, it's more empowering. And it's not like putting you, it's, once again, you know, given what you just said, it isn't someone comment, even though you're coming from a place where you're supporting this person and having their abortion, you know, in either commenting or giving your opinion about their situation, you're once again setting yourself up as someone who is commenting on their life, you know, and it's not being centered within the person themselves. Do you understand what I mean?
That's a really great point, Joan. When I was, the 1 week that I was waiting for my abortion appointment, I went to my student health center because I was so nauseous, and I had to finish my assignments, and, you know, I have ADHD, so I take my Adderall and yada, yada, yada. And so I went to the student health center pharmacist to ask for something to help with nausea. And she's like, well, why are you nauseous? And I'm like, well, I'm pregnant, but I'm getting an abortion. And then the whole conversation shifted to, well, this would be safe for the fetus too. And I was like, no, I do not care about that. Like I said, I'm getting an abortion. She said, well, you could change your mind. I said, well, I'm not going to change my mind. And then I went to go see, then I went to the urgent care center on campus so I can actually see a provider who would prescribe me something. I was like, look, I don't care about this right now. I'm in the middle of finals. I'm already taking my other medications that are probably not safe for the fetus that I do not plan on carrying further. So I would just take the medication, please. And I told her, I was like, the pharmacist, that was really uncomfortable, very frustrating, the whole conversation. Now I feel like in that moment, just saying that I was pregnant, I lost a part of my bodily autonomy already. That, oh, now it's no longer my body, but now this fetus that I'm not planning on carrying any further. Now that's part of the conversation, which it should never have been in the first place. When I'm the patient centered and asking for help and for care.
Mm. I mean, it's just like a light switch, right? It's like as soon as someone says I'm pregnant, it's like there's a whole different paradigm that we're given for how to interact with that person. And I wanna note a couple things that I'm noticing about as y'all are talking. One is that I'm hearing that y'all are talking about providing support in several different contexts. So I just wanted to name that, you know, whether it's Joan's experience working as a counselor at a clinic, whether it is, you know, Margaret referencing doing this work over the talk line, the All Options talk line, which I recommend people check out. And Margaret and I met as advocates on that talk line. And I think Karen is here, who's also an advocate on that talk line. So it's a wonderful resource to share with people who may need to, support around their experiences. So that's virtual support. And then thinking about the ways that people can provide this support and this kind of compassion, and I think of it as compassionate witnessing, right? In our daily lives as well. So just wanted to point out that there are just so many contexts in which we have the opportunity to witness with someone, to offer them that compassion, that, like Margaret said, they may have never been told, I trust you to know what's best for you, without judgment. That is a life-changing thing when you hear it for the first time. So I just want to say, like, as much experience as y'all are bringing this is also something that is like available to us in our ordinary everyday encounters, not just with people who are, talking about abortion, but just in general. What are the opportunities for us to meet people without judgment around their, whatever their reproductive decisions or experiences are? Because we live in a world where once you become pregnant, it's like all rules are out the window. Anybody can say anything to you.
Well, and that goes back to the whole issue of your bodily autonomy, that as Celine points out, you're right, that the moment somebody learns of a person's pregnancy, their body becomes public property. People make assumptions for you. If you say you're not going to have children, like your friend with the IUD, people automatically say, oh, you might change your mind. Really? You think I came to this decision without thinking about it first? So yeah, I think that is one of those things that we have to live every day, of reminding the people in our daily lives and the people we encounter that these are nuanced decisions. These are decisions that are very personal and, frankly, no one else's business. But at the same time, I want to support folks, and I can't tell you how many people I've said, if there's no right decisions, there's also no wrong decisions.
And I love that. So one of the things I'm hoping to coax out of each of you is like some of those, like, on all options, they call it wisdom nuggets, but not a fan of the word nugget. So I just but I think, what are some of those phrases that you have found, whether you're on the receiving end of that in your own experience or whether you're offering that to someone else, what are some of those phrases in your pocket, that you find really open up space for people to know that they're not being judged, right? Or help them to feel held in whatever their experience is? Like, what are some of those go-to phrases that you find really useful and helpful? You can think on that.
Well, Celine had pointed out that she was not feeling guilty, or she was not feeling whatever fill in the blank that society would have you believe you were supposed to feel. And one of the things through the talk line that we talk to folks about, a lot of folks will express that they are concerned about how they're going to feel after the abortion. And one of the things that I point out often is that if they find that they are sad or grieving afterwards, which is often what they express they are concerned about, that it doesn't necessarily mean they made the wrong decision. That grieving can be part of that process of a good decision, of a right decision, the best decision they could have made. And this is just one of those things that gets added in. It doesn't mean you did the wrong thing. And I think there's oftentimes relief, but I also do explain to people that lots of folks who have abortions, the thing they report the most is feeling relieved afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, can I offer a nugget that is not maybe verbal? I mean, I think if you're in person, I think, at least in my experience, the best way to someone's soul and heart is through offering a meal or offering some kind of physical nourishment, especially that feeling of relief. I was grateful to have my mother with me during my abortion. And, when I finally everything passed, I was like, wow, I'm so hungry, and then she just made me a little slice of toast, but it was just like the most amazing feeling. And just knowing that through my experience, like, oh, well, if someone can just offer me something, like make a decision, a Gatorade, can I make you a sandwich if someone's over, and just letting you just sit in that moment of like, well, I'm feeding you, I'm taking care of you. Let me just take off some of the pressure that feels like, oh, I have to make all these choices, decisions, but at least I know that like I'm able to take care of my body right now the way it needs to just by being fed.
So I guess the thing that well, first of all, I would kind of like to create this context so this feels a little less theoretical for everyone here, and I may not have to do it for most of you, but we are on the precipice of half the country shutting down to women, half the country shutting down for access to abortion, and I given I know it's been extremely hard, even with Roe being on the books, completely legal access, is very, very, it's erratic across this country. I'm really well aware of that. I think that for those of us who live in states where abortion is going to remain legal, we are going to be flooded with people coming from other states, and they're not going to have the benefit of going to a Planned Parenthood or going to an individual provider or talking to, someone from a really good fund, who helps them through the beginnings of their, preparations and, just any kind of like emotional doulaing or counseling. And, those of us who volunteered to like put people up in their homes and provide transportation to, abortion clinics and providers, are probably going to be the people that, these people are, maybe the first person that these people can be real with about their abortions. So that's kind of why we're here today, is to just talk about, just how best to do that, or, not in an ideal way, but, just some basic steps. And I honestly, in terms of a nugget, I cannot believe the simple phrase of, I don't judge you, or you are not judged here. We just we completely respect you. And we completely respect your decisions for making respect your processes, for making the decision you're making. And it's just amazing how that it can bring down the house. It can be, people can just, feel it so deeply. I don't know. I feel like it changes everything. And yeah, and I would, totally agree with everything that's been said too by Margaret and Celine.
And so this makes me think a bit about people who are pro-choice, pro-abortion. They want people to have access to abortion, but are maybe also like not super experienced or skilled in having conversations about people's own emotions around their own experience. There are certain topics I think people are really afraid of, and I was recently supporting a young person through her abortion in clinic. And, she said the thing that is so common, which is, in my religion, this is murder. And right. And so I just want to go for a minute to that place that I think a lot of people get really caught up around. And also there's the political rhetoric. And then there's people's individual thoughts, feelings, and decision-making. And there is a big gap, I think, in the world between our political, public-facing, organizing rhetoric and the way we talk about abortion, and then the real realities of how people in that situation, they come with a lot of different feelings. And like Margaret said, there's a lot of baggage to unpack. And my response to this young person was, can you tell me about your own relationship with God? And do you feel that God knows what's in your heart? Do you feel that you can communicate with God? about what you need, and that there's room for forgiveness over the course of your life about this with your God, right? And to not shy away from it. And I don't need to know what her religion is. I don't need to make any judgments, right? I just need to say, what is your experience of God? And how can we maybe move towards some healing there, right? To open the possibility that maybe there is healing. Because the political rhetoric would be, it's not murder, right? That's the political response. That's not the counseling or emotional support response. Or it's just a ball of cells, like all those things that people oversimplify in political spaces that are not helpful when we're really met with someone's genuine emotion in that moment. So I'm curious if y'all can talk a bit about those sticky places and how we can show up for people as they need us to be, not as we are, whatever our feelings or thoughts are.
Can I speak? Am I allowed? My name is Lynn Nielsen. Am I allowed to speak?
Oh, hi, Lynn. Yeah, sure.
I don't know how to do this. I'm new at this game. I just want to say something very brief. You're all much better at this than I, but I had an abortion in 1964. It was illegal. I had German measles in the first weeks, and I didn't have any opposition to it. My husband was very much he knew what we were up to. He knew what we were facing, and he left it to me. He said he would accept my decision, and he did. My parents, everyone I knew was with me. So I didn't have any opposition, but I just want to speak about that regret. Sure, I did regret it afterwards, but not for very long. It had to be done. And all I know is that women know when something like this has to be done. And we know how to stand up for it. We're stronger than that, I think. And I felt, and still do, that we need to support everyone that is facing this decision. Yes, and I wish I could in another way. I don't have that opportunity, but I just know that as far as I know, it is a very personal position to be in, and nobody else has anything really to say about it. It's a woman's decision, and leave it be. That's all.
Thank you, Lynn.
Well, and you're absolutely spot on with the line, and I may use this in the future, that you know what has to be done in your own life.
Yeah.
And that's something that unfortunately is taken away from so many people.
It's so interesting because abortion can raise other issues for someone that are really seminal. Abortion can be a real turning point in a woman's life in a positive direction. I've had patients say to me, wow, I can get pregnant, and this partner is not the partner I want to have, as the father of one of my children, and I think I need to look at, how I'm living my life right now, and it's just interesting. It can be it can be positive in many respects, because it can, it certainly can help people, sort of stay on their paths, but it also can have like provide unexpected insights in terms of, one's life and the decisions they're making and their choices. And Kate, I would totally agree with you. I've had patients who, religion is huge and faith is huge, and the concept of murder is right there. And, I've said the same as you. I said, so you sound like your God is a really punishing God. And is that how you feel about God? And it's a moment, because it may not be how she feels about God. or they feel about God. So it's, yeah, but the other thing though, is that, I'm not a pastoral counselor, but, our Planned Parenthood did have like a retinue of pro-choice pastoral counselors. And I often made appointments for our patients who were struggling spiritually, with their decision. So that was an excellent resource. And, the other thing too is I remember having a patient who had been seen in the clinic, and she had been brought to me because I just needed to do some, take care of some bureaucratic, like loose end stuff with her in order to schedule her for her abortion. And the nurse who brought her in said, before, she brought her into the room, she said, she's absolutely clear, no issues at all. And she sat down and I said, so how are you? And she just burst into tears. And I said, what's going on? And the tears were not about her firmness, her decision to end the pregnancy. They were about her guilt around not using her birth control perfectly. And that was her issue. And that is, that kind of underscores what I was saying about don't assume what is uppermost for a person, is that, and we talked it through, we spent 30 minutes together, on this, and it was better. It was better by the end. So I just, just being open, being kind, being willing to sit there, being willing to listen, it really can move mountains.
When we have a question from Karen Thurston saying, she's curious how much of your experience involves trying to correct misinformation about abortion, and what is that like? So if someone's, I know on we get all kinds of questions, right? Or we are in a sea of misinformation about disinformation about abortion in our culture. So yeah, how do we correct misinformation while also validating the way people feel, right? And not giving advice and all that. So if anyone is interested in speaking to that.
Well, I'm not, am I hogging here? No, okay. I just, that has become more, people who had been to their crisis pregnancy centers before they came to Planned Parenthood had, they had gotten so much misinformation. They were worried about breast cancer. They were worried that they'd have to bring the products of conception after their medication abortion. They'd have to collect it and bring it back into Planned Parenthood and have us look at it. And they were, they were worried about infertility. They were worried about, drug addiction and eating disorders and everything else that the Crisis Pregnancy Center warned them against about abortion. And and then people do go online, and there's a lot of anti-choice sites online. And there are really scary graphics online, and even things that involve claws and pointy objects and, all sorts of things to scare the life out of somebody, especially a young somebody. And, it's gotten harder as a result.
I think it's really gone hard thinking first, in my friends and families and communities, of just how much a lot of QAnon has infiltrated, and a lot of conspiracy theory, and just in my own family of that's very difficult. In California, there's a bill right now that's going to protect people who experience pregnancy loss from being criminalized, being jailed, prosecuted. But of course, the aunties are calling it an infanticide bill and going on, and all these really intentional disinformation. And that's very difficult then to talk to friends of just well, what's going on? It's well, that's not, I can show you the information, I can show you the bill, but there's people that just will not listen. And so I think it's also prioritizing of like, well, what's the best use of your time and your emotional energy to, if someone doesn't want to know the truth and doesn't actually want to engage with you honestly, then I think it's just being kind, being friendly. But, you know, I especially some family members, I just can't engage any more further than just like, well, I support you, I respect you, but I'm not going to try to argue with you, persuade you for anything right now. And I'm going to move my support towards my friends who are like, hey, like, what's going on with Roe v. Wade? Like, can I still get an abortion? Like, here's everything you need to know. You can go to those websites, like, and just be, I think too, like being clear to like your community, like, hey, I know this information, or like, I'm an ally, or I'm an empathetic person, or I've been there. Like, it's safe if you come to me, and being able to have that awareness that your friends know, your family knows, your community knows, like, oh, well, Celine knows, Celine, go ask Celine, or Celine might be able to help you, and being that person in your groups.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that we do, certainly in terms of correcting misinformation or misperceptions or bad information that people have been given, is talk about, you know, reminding folks that there's, you know, good and bad information out there, and we have to be critical of our sources before we even click on that website. You know, WebMD, and I always pick on WebMD, is, you know, you never ever, you know, look up your symptoms on WebMD, because you immediately have the worst possible thing ever. But then also, one of the things that I point out is that at the All Options website, they have a resource tab, and they have lots and lots of website links for everything from pregnancy, parenting, abortion, adoption, and that all of those sites have been vetted for having good information, for, you know, not unnecessarily shaming people, having information that is factually correct, medically correct, and that kind of stuff. Because I think that sometimes, especially when you're in a crisis, and you're just trying to figure out and get your bearings, you do need a little help in trying to figure out which websites are acceptable in terms of medically accurate information, scientifically accurate information, and what's out there just to torment and horrify people.
Yeah, and also sometimes I think the questions that people ask that include misinformation are also like the heart of that. I found is often what they're asking is, am I good? Am I a good person if I do this? And like, I think it's important to think about what we try to get at with open-ended question is the question inside the question. It's like these Russian stacking dolls or whatever. Like, usually what someone is asking is, am I good? And am I going to be okay? Right. And I think one of the things that I have said that people almost without fail would cry upon hearing it is, I promise you, nothing about this experience is a test of your goodness. Nothing about it. Like, you are good. And this is a situation where you're going to do the best you can. And almost without fail, people just start sobbing, because that's what most of us are asking is, am I good? Am I any good? Yeah. Like, am I going to be okay? And so it really matters to be able to say, this is not a test of your goodness, your worthiness, how smart you are, how responsible you are. It's not a test. It's just a thing you are going through the best way you can. And
I think
it.
I guess, and I think that compassion really communicates that also. It really contradicts. I mean, with someone who is being compassionate with you and is, and is not judging you, it just contradicts that notion of being bad, or being sinful or being immoral, it just.
Well, and so many.
But I do like I like what you said a lot.
Yeah. So many people, until they're in the position of either knowing somebody close to them who is having an abortion, or they themselves are facing abortion, their only experiences are what the media projects. And even if you've watched like old movies, and the narrative is getting better with the media, at least television, movies, and things like that. At one time, anytime you saw somebody have an abortion in a movie or in TV, they suffered, they bled to death. You know, they were infertile, you know, they regretted it for the rest of their lives. You know, all of these, you know, big looming horrible things. And that's the idea that people bring to the experience.
You know, I provided post-abortion counseling as well. And I have to say that an overwhelming number of the time when people had like profound regret or lifelong, you know, pain, it had to do with them not having a choice about their abortion, them being pressured into it, and or someone else making that decision for them. And had they had the choice, they might have still chosen abortion, but it would have been an entirely different experience.
Yeah, that feels so true. It's really about, you know, life is full of hard things, right? And we are complicated and we go through hard things. And so we can't make life where there's no hard things. But I think the same way about birth doula work as I do abortion doula work, that like what really matters is how someone feels supported or not, and agency or not in that situation, that makes the difference in how they reflect on it later. So someone could have a birth plan and everything goes totally upside down and they don't end up with the birth they had envisioned, and maybe parts of it are really hard and traumatic. If they have a really good doula and they feel really held and respected, I have had clients say like, man, that wasn't at all what I wanted, what I thought I wanted. And yet it was so beautiful and I felt so cared for. And so the support really makes the difference for trauma, right? Like in terms of what is traumatic versus what is just a difficult thing that we're going through. And so reminding us that like all of us, whatever our roles are in life, we know people who've had abortions and we know people who are going to have abortions. So how we talk about that in our daily lives can also plant these little seeds of compassion for themselves and for others when they come up against all of these terrible messages, right, that we get about abortion. And what those messages say is that we're all very simple and one-dimensional, and we're either good or bad. And we know the truth is we're all really complicated, right? We get to be complicated. I think that's the heart of what abortion work is for me, is you get to be complicated. You get to have more than one emotion.
Like, that's true. You know, and the other thing I'm going to jump on with that is, wait, did I just interrupt somebody?
Well, I don't know. Yes, can I speak?
Yes.
I don't know how to do this. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Lynn. We can hear you and see you.
I just want to say this in closing. You're all so more involved and interesting than I am, but I do know this, that part of me right now is thinking, what are we going back to if Roe v. Wade is turned over? And it seems like it might be. And what I did have to deal with, when I did decide, my obstetrician said, well, I will do whatever you choose. You're in charge. Well, I didn't say it like that, but I had German measles in the first 3 weeks of the pregnancy. This is serious. The damage that was done to the fetus was serious. They knew that then, not much, but they knew. So when I told them that I wanted to go ahead with the abortion, things slowed up. They slowed down. And what my doctor told me, that my petition, is what they called it, would have to go before a board of ethics at the local hospital where I would go. And my heart started pounding a lot. I thought, oh, this isn't my decision. It's gone. These people, I don't know who they are. Who's on that board of, we don't know. It took 6 weeks. I was into my second trimester by the time I went into that abortion. And I don't want anyone, anywhere to have to go back to that. And they said yes, but they could have said no. And what would I have done then? I don't know. So we don't want to go there.
Right.
Anything I can do to prevent that would be, or It's my haunting thought that I don't want anyone to have to go through anything like that, or any of the things you're speaking about. No.
Right. Yeah. Well, we want our experience to have meaning.
Yes.
You know, we want it. Yeah, exactly.
Of course. And that's what, if anything can come of this, all this speaking to whomever, let it be known. This is what we do. This is what we think.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We're here.
I appreciate you sharing that, Lynn.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing about your experience.
Yeah, it wasn't fun. And it turned out well, but not, could have not.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go there, please. Don't make us go there.
Can I say one last kind of counseling thing or listening thing? A lot of, God, I so believe in like abortion counseling. I just so completely believe in it. I don't believe that everybody has to have it. I just believe that it should be available to everyone if they, if they feel they'd benefit from it. And that's kind of the way we structured it at our clinic. But what I have found is that the abortion experience is also is often compounded by other things that are going on in someone's life at the time, like a breakup, or a partner just ups and leaves when he hears that his partner is pregnant, or something going on in the family, and it all gets enmeshed into the abortion. Like that's how they remember the abortion, with like all of this chaos and all of this pain and heartbreak. And I think it can be so valuable to tease all of that out, to talk about the abortion as, as its own thing, and these other things vitally important to talk about, but as their thing, and that, they should continue to get support on the other aspects of their life that are, problematic at that time. But I think that that's really, really important, because I think that gets layered on to many people's abortion experience. And especially if, there are people judging, and there's, coercion, and there's pushing and this and that, and like relationship issues, it's really unfair, because
thank you, Jill.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I'd like to share, because I had a very similar experience to how things get tangled up. And at the time I was seeing a psychologist, so I was able to work through those tangles. But when I was making my decision, my older cousin had a young daughter who was, the father was not in the picture. She was a single mother living with her, my aunt and uncle, her parents. And I saw her life, and I was like, well, that's not something that I want for myself right now. Really using like people in my life, like, oh, what do their pregnancies look like? Then a month later, my cousin lost her child in a really tragic accident. And that really changed the whole way I viewed my abortion for like a whole 2 months of like, wow, well, my cousin, I didn't want to continue pregnancy because I saw my cousin and now she lost her child. And like, now is there something wrong with me that like it was this very strange guilt all tangled together with the loss of a family member. And I really had to tease it out. But the one thing that really did help was being in these really sad moments of, coming together in the wake of her death, Viviana's death, and hearing the parents talk about their experience of how, well, my child had this happen to them, or had spina bifida and had to do these things. And really realizing me then as a person that just hadn't made choice, like, well, I really made the right choice, because I am not ready to be responsible for their life right now. And all the different ways that happens when you carry a pregnancy and have a child. But it did require the compassion and someone to help me detangle all these different traumatic experiences, because my abortion is the least traumatic part of that summer. It's the easiest thing that happened to me. And so thank you for pointing that out, because that's something that would be helpful to share.
I think you're absolutely right, both of you, that having people in your life, whether it's somebody who just sort of naturally is compassionate, or somebody who's had training, who actually can listen and be there and hold that space, and let you figure things out, whether you're paying them or not. I think that's so really important with so many aspects of our lives.
Mm. Yeah, and that is a great place to end, though I could sit here and listen and talk with you all forever. We are at our time, and I think one of the biggest takeaways from this conversation, it sounds so cheesy maybe, but like, we need to practice deep compassion for one another. And I think practicing deep compassion and witnessing is part of honoring what someone's autonomy is about, right? That I can say I care about autonomy, but how do I show that? And part of that is just meeting people with compassion and understanding when they're going through something, right? And just, I trust you're going through it. It sounds horrible and difficult for you, or it sounds like you're really frustrated, or whatever it is. And I have faith in you. Like, I believe you're going to get to the other side. I just want to be a soft place to land. And I think in this scary moment, which Lynn is reminding us, we're moving into times that are, in some ways, remind people of the past. And also there's new scary things in this moment too, that didn't exist pre-Roe, right? Like a very expansive carceral state, lots of surveillance that didn't exist, technology, all of these things. So there's scary stuff. These practices we engage in together, I really do believe they make a difference when people are so scared and stressed. So I want to thank each of you, Joan, Margaret, and Celine, for sharing with us tonight. I want to thank Lynn for also sharing yourself with us tonight. And thank you, all of you, for being here. Yeah, this is a big piece of the work that doesn't get enough attention. And so I really appreciate y'all spending time with us to dig into it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, everybody.
Is it possible to get anybody's contact information for this group? I was invited